Hello, everybody. Welcome to Laser Focus. This is the deep dive pop culture podcast from Nerdist. I'm Kyle Anderson. Thank you so much for listening. Folks, we're finally not talking about a brand new thing, but this week we are fully talking about something that is old, and we are celebrating the fact that it's old. What? What a weird way to start. It is 1975, is 50 years ago, everybody. Neither myself nor my guest, and I'll introduce you in a moment, were alive then, but the topic of today's podcast is something that we grew up with, and I think it's just kind of part of the fabric of people who watch movies, and we'll get into that a little bit. And we're of course talking about what I think is roundly considered and believed and truthfully called the first blockbuster. The term blockbuster was coined for this movie, and we will talk about that and what's the summer blockbuster means kind of going forward. And we are of course talking about Steven Spielberg's Jaws, again from 1975, a movie I have seen an uncountable amount of times. I think, not even full from beginning to end, but it's up there with which I think we've talked about, you and I, before, and I will introduce you in a moment. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where it's like, if it's on, I'm gonna watch at least however much of it I can, and probably to the end. But like it's not. I don't watch it from beginning to end all that often. And joining me to talk about this, and I'll introduce you right now, is Mikey Walsh. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Very, very excited to be here. I have seen Jaws probably more times than is mathematically possible in
Sure.
my lifetime. Just ripping through the space-time continuum to get in extra viewings.
It is one of those movies that like I just knew about for such a long time. Like one of the first, I won't say first, but one of the early memories of going to the movies for me was Back to the Future 2, and there's that big Jaws, 3D, thing which looks so quaint now from 2015. Thing in that movie. So I kind of knew what Jaws was. I knew the score. Like I don't even know why I knew all that stuff. And then I think, how old was I? I don't really remember. Maybe I was like, excuse me, in middle school or like early high school was when TNT would just show Jaws like all the time. And that was the first, I don't know, million times I watched it was on television before I actually ever put on a DVD or anything like that. Yeah, is it a perfect movie? I guess we'll start with that.
Yeah, I think
Great.
it is.
Okay.
It's I'm kind of obsessed with this. It's like a quiet obsession of mine, this idea of perfect movies. That is not the same as the greatest movies.
Sure.
It's just that it is a movie that there is not one single thing you would change, not one single thing that feels out of place or even slightly off. It's just absolutely perfect from start to finish. Other movies that I think of like this include the first Back to the Future,
Mm-hmm.
Shaun of the Dead.
Sure.
So we're not. That could be its own podcast, but yeah, I think Jaws is quite literally perfect in every single way from start to finish. I'm sure that there will be people who say something like, "Oh, the shark, seems a little dated." Okay, it is of its era.
Right.
we can't. Were we supposed to go back and criticize silent movies for
Yeah.
that can't be that. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I also think it is not only in the handful of most perfect movies ever made, but most important for reasons we're going to get into here.
Yeah, it's obviously the 70s were a huge, I'm not the first person to say this, obviously, but like a huge transition period in Hollywood when you went from the studio system into quote unquote new Hollywood, even though most of the filmmakers within new Hollywood worked firmly within the studio system. It was just sort of like tastes changed, and as early as 1967, I think, is when Bonnie and Clyde came out, and it was like the first counterculture studio movie kind of thing, even though that was obviously set in the 30s or whatever. And then this sort of post, I guess, the baby boomer kind of movies, like, or movies made by and for baby boomers, was sort of the beginning of it. And then by the time you get to the 70s, you have Coppola making the Godfather movies, and you have which were big, huge, lavish movies, and then Scorsese a little bit later, like obviously started making Taxi Driver in 76 and Raging Bull in 1980 and everything like that. So and dozens and dozens of other movies in between. And then you have Spielberg, who came from he was like a Universal contract director. He did a lot of television. He did like the pilot or one of the segments in the pilot movie of Night Gallery, which is the Rod Serling show, which is actually quite good if you've never seen it. And he just, he directed episodes of like Columbo, basically like any studio backlot show. I love watching old TV because of that. It's like, especially because I live in LA. So it's like, I know where that is. Which I find really interesting and fun. And, he had made the TV movie Duel, which is incredible. And then the feature film Sugarland Express, which I think is fine. And then this movie based on a book that was a bestseller, which is, I don't know if you've ever read Peter Benchley's Jaws. It's not a good book.
It's everything you ever read about. It's like, yeah, it's entertaining but trashy. There's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
bunch of ridiculous storylines that they completely cut from the movie that make
tons of
the story
characters
so much
that
better.
don't need to be there. Yeah, there's Hooper and Mrs. Brody have like an affair, like somehow, like during the course of this.
The mayor owes the mob money or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So we can't close the town because the mayor owes the mob money and all this stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous, and just not a particularly good movie. And I think, and Hooper dies in the book but there's no reason for him to die in the movie because there's not that subplot, and everything like that. There's thematic things in there, and the movie, there's documentaries upon documentaries upon documentaries. Every 10 years, they make a new feature-length documentary about the making of Jaws and whatever.
Honestly, it feels like every 2 years now.
Yeah, kind of. And every time they put out a new edition of the movie on Blu-ray or now 4K, like they will put a brand new, retrospective documentary on there. I remember watching the True Hollywood Story about it back in the.
Oh yeah, watching it over and over.
Yeah, because they would show that constantly. And just so, yeah, the famous stories about the movie and how the shark, they built a mechanical shark, it didn't work, and so they had to figure out how to make the movie without the shark that worked. And it's amazing how good the movie is considering that, and how scary it is, and how effective the little bits of the shark you do see are. I mean, we're gonna need a bigger boat is ubiquitous line. I think we'll get into like the specific lines in the movie because I think almost every line is like iconic in its own way. But and then the ending with like the wide shot of the shark attacking the ship and everything like that. It's incredible, like what they were able to do and set up. It's a movie that takes its time, so you don't see the shark early at all. Then you'll see a fin, you'll see it, someone get pulled under and stuff like that. And it's like, it feels really apocalyptic in a way that just a mechanical shark would not have felt that way.
And this shows how much luck is involved with all of these things, because if the shark had worked, they would have shown the shark more. That was the original plan.
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, well, we kind of have to hide him, and it's the best thing for the movie.
Yeah.
Like you not seeing how big, when you get to that scene, it's like he's got to be at least 20 feet, 25. That's chilling little moments, because like, oh my God, like these guys were not prepared for what they are out here to do. And now we're out here in the middle of the ocean with them. And of course, it basically turns into horror movie, like a real horror movie once they're truly trapped out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's there's no praise that's ever been given to this movie that is not earned and not fair.
And it's amazing how some of these movies became like, cultural, I won't say touchstones, but also like at the time were just like, I won't say a grown-up movies, but this is it's a violent movie. It's a scary movie. It's, all this stuff. It's a grown, I will say a lot of it feels very grown up about, something obviously that Spielberg deals with a lot is like men realizing that they're dads and what that has to be like. And it's a very, particular type of thing that he deals with. But like just a couple of years before this, you had The Exorcist, which is like a big, a scary, demonic Satan like focused horror movie that lit the world on fire in an interesting way, and was nominated for a bunch of Oscars and everything like that. So there was a time when big movies like this spectacle movies or like popcorn movies, for lack of a better term, could be awards favorites or whatever, and thoughtful, and they were treated seriously, and they weren't just seen as, and that's something we've been fighting for and about for a long time. I don't think every big movie or big, franchise movie needs to be considered as like high art or anything like that, but some of them are, and some of them, and they need to be kind of thought of that way. I think, by virtue of the fact that it came out in like February or March or whenever it came out, like the Batman, I think deserved to be like of recent years, like deserve to be considered, at least for, kind of the more technical side of things. And like, obviously we saw that like Mad Max Fury Road got nominated a bunch, but it only won technical stuff. Like they're still not ready to give it to kind of big action movies or big kind of sci-fi or big, genre conceit movies, for the most part. But Jaws, did it win Best Picture? I don't even remember.
No, but it won 3 out of 4 categories it was nominated in.
I should bring that up.
Yeah, we're also, I know maybe we should just talk about it now. I mean, this movie creates the concept of the summer blockbuster.
Yes.
It is universally considered the first summer blockbuster, but that's kind of a funny thing, because that was not something anybody was trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
If you read about the history of movie theaters, summer before air conditioning was the worst time. Nobody wanted to sit in this hot little box watching it. Things start to change, and what kind of in the one way that Jaws does actually create a template for the summer blockbuster is that Universal promotes it in a way movies just were not promoted. They start months and months earlier. They spend millions of dollars. I think I saw something that the final budget for Jaws, which went over budget because it took extra months to film, I think was $9 million, and they spent something like $2 million on advertising. That seems normal to us today. It was not normal then. They had people doing interviews months and months and months in advance. There was real anticipation. They pushed the book so people would read the book and be excited to go. They re-released the book with the cover from the poster from the movie onto the book. There's something that's standard practice now. And then it works. It works. It not only sets box office records, people are lining up to see this again and again and again. And none of this would work if the movie wasn't phenomenal, if it wasn't an all-time great. But it launches, every summer, right? We look ahead on the calendar and be like, okay, what are going to be the big ones we're covering this summer, right? This year, we're going to get Superman. We're going to get Fantastic Four. We've already had a couple. I just reviewed F1.
Yeah, Jurassic Park.
Like
Jurassic potential. Yeah, like they're big summer movies.
Every summer, there's just tons of these big budget movies which are supposed to have mass appeal, and this all goes back to Jaws.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, the reason the word blockbuster exists is that literally lines would go around the block. They have busted the block, basically, or they would cross the street, or they would, wrap around or whatever. And the phenomenon did not begin with Jaws. There were movies like, but a lot of them were like roadshow pictures, like, way back. There was like, Gone with the Wind or whatever would like go around the country, and then people would line up and if you look at adjusted for inflation movies, like Gone with the Wind is still like one of the most profitable movies ever because people just kept going.
You mentioned The Exorcist. You mentioned The Exorcist, which exactly. It's just a couple years earlier, and Jaws, just comes out ahead of it in terms of, it wasn't like there weren't huge movies. Totally. It was just this idea of like, oh my goodness, look at what Jaws did during this period where like we can do this. Let's replicate it. Let's also make a movie aimed at that demographic, like that time period and this wide ranging demographic. It's this is why I said it's in the handful of most important movies ever. Just imagine what the landscape of movies would be like if studios weren't looking at the summer to release these huge, expensive movies that are designed. Not that they do it, and believe me, there's lots of summer blockbuster bombs. Looking at you, Matthew Broderick, Godzilla. But there are. Just imagine if we didn't have this.
Yeah,
it's you almost can't. Like we like you said, we've grown up with Jaws, but we've also grown up in the world Jaws created.
Yeah, Yeah, like Jaws was a phenomenon, and then 2 years later you had Star Wars that was even more of a phenomenon, and it was in theaters for more than a year. Like people, if people say they went and saw it in in its first theatrical run, there's a whole year maybe in there where they might have seen it because it sort of took a while to kind of spread across the country and the world and everything like that. But from then on, Hollywood executives were like, "Hey, we can make tons of money if we actually like put a lot of money into these movies," which is how you get the modern sensibility of like we have to spend at least X $100 million in an attempt to make $1 billion. And that's why if movies like Marvel movies, which we would consider like successful, if they don't cross $1 billion, like that's not considered a success. And obviously, that's the way of the world. Inflation has gotten to the point where like you have to make $1 billion to even be considered a success for the most part, or you have to be like a $2 million movie that makes $15 million, and it's like, hey, that was profitable or whatever. But like, you know, Jaws set the stage and made Steven Spielberg a name, because like 2 years after that, the same year as Star Wars, not quite as successful obviously, but Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a huge sci-fi movie, big, and then he did 1941, which was a major bomb, and then but he came right back with the relatively small budgeted E.T., which I saw recently a few years ago for its God, was it that long ago? I guess maybe it was, but for its 40th anniversary, so that would have been 3 years ago, uh, at the Chinese, and I was kind of surprised at how small it felt, considering it's Steven Spielberg at what I thought was the top of his form, but it was sort of like. Because 1941 had been this big budget disaster, he kind of had to go small again, even though it's kind of whatever. And then he made around that, made the Indiana Jones movies, and just, he became Steven Spielberg because of this. And like, no matter how many kind of just okay or underperforming or kind of like lame movies he makes in his later life, like he's still the guy who made Jaws, Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park. Like he is the guy. Like, and then it's because of Jaws.
And he doesn't get, because he's one of the greatest directors ever, he doesn't get thought of this way, and he shouldn't, because this will sound like almost, but he is Mr. Summer Blockbuster.
Yeah,
like he creates it, and then nobody, like, we're going to discuss some of the other greatest summer blockbusters, and he is all over this list.
yeah,
He's just everywhere. It's just every like, it's really incredible, and it's a testament to his ability to make movies for everyone. I think sometimes that gets held against him,
mm-hmm.
which is like almost like criticizing the world's greatest pop artists for selling, the most records. Like, oh, well, it's just for everybody. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
We're all allowed. It's okay if we all like the same thing, if the thing is really good. And I don't think Spielberg is above criticism. And you and I have talked about this in the past. He has a run in his career where he doesn't make a movie that's even good for a long time. He makes a bunch of really like okay movies for a very long time. But he also has a run of films that's, I think, is pretty much unmatched, just because of how many he puts out.
We've done this before, and I think we'll do it right now. But like the sort of like pass fail kind of like, is it great or not great, or I mean whatever, we can call it whatever we want. But like, he's directed 60 things, like, and that includes obviously a lot of his TV work too. But like that's a lot, and especially in this day and age when Tarantino's maybe going to direct 12 movies by the time he's done. So yeah, like I said, we got his first big thing was Duel, which I think is a really cool.
Duel's really good. Used to be on Saturday afternoons all the time.
Oh my gosh, it is like one of the most syndicated movies I think ever. Obviously, it was made for TV, but like, and then he made a couple TV movies after that which were not good, like something called Something Evil and something called Savage, both of which have pretty mid reputations. Sugarland Express, like I said, which is it's kind of a crime dark comedy thing, which I just didn't do particularly well. And then he's got obviously Jaws, Close Encounters, 1941, which, okay, bomb. Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. He directed one segment of Twilight Zone, the movie, which may be the most boring segment in that movie. Temple of Doom. He did Amazing Stories. That was kind of like his TV show, which was sort of like Twilight Zone inspired. The Color Purple, for which he was nominated for an Oscar. So he was nominated for an Oscar for Close Encounters, Raiders, E.T., and The Color Purple.
Not Jaws.
Not Jaws.
Not Jaws.
Empire of the Sun, which is a pretty good movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's good. It's got a very, like, he's a kid Christian Bale in it. A young English boy struggles to survive under Japanese occupation of China during World War II. Really interesting, kind of atypical movie for him, but that's when he was trying to do like atypical stuff. Last Crusade, which is maybe my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Always, which is not a good movie. That was like, I don't know if you've ever seen that one either. It's about like Richard Dreyfuss is a ghost or something like that.
I don't even think I've ever heard of Always.
The spirit of a recently deceased expert pilot mentors a newer pilot while watching him fall in love with the girlfriend that he left behind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not good. Not a good movie.
At least it's got Holly Hunter and
it does, yeah, and John Goodman and Hook, which it's one I watched a million times as a kid, but like I don't actually think it's a good movie.
Kyle, I think when next time we're in a quiet spot, we gotta revisit Hook to try to figure out what's going on.
Why people like it?
Some people hate it, some people like it, and I've settled on. I actually just need to sit down and rewatch it.
I don't know if you do, but have fun with that. We could do that. I think that's a decent enough thing to do. Then you got Jurassic Park and Schindler's List the same year. Are you kidding me?
Year.
Are you
same year?
Me? And that was he won his first Best Director Oscar for that, for Schindler's List. Then he made a video game called Steven Spielberg's Director's Chair. I had never heard of this, but if you watch the upcoming Jurassic Park timeline video that Adam Murray's been making, which I think will be out sometime, possibly when you hear this, it will be out on our YouTube. He includes some bits from Steven Spielberg's Director's Chair where he teaches you how to direct a movie. And in this fake movie that you have to, pick the shots from and stuff, stars Quentin Tarantino. It is so strange.
You thinking they're gonna remake it for the PS5?
I hope so. You should look at it. It's like FMV stuff. It looks real silly, but Lost World, which I remember being so excited for the Lost World in 1997, but Amistad, which is fine.
That is the one I will go to. I will go to bat for. Okay. I think Amistad is really good. I think it's really well directed. I really like that movie, and a nice little McConaughey performance in that film.
Yeah. It's been forever since I've seen it. I remember thinking it was, again, like I said, fine. Then you got Saving Private Ryan. He won an Oscar for that too. AI, artificial intelligence, which is underrated, I think. He's basically like taking a lot of stuff that Kubrick left behind and kind of made a good movie out of it, I think. Then you got Minority Report, which I think is a banger of a sci-fi movie.
Totally
Catch Me
agree.
If You Can, which is tremendous. The Terminal, which a lot of people like, but I think is not good.
For the record, I like The Terminal, but it's certainly not a great movie. It's a very light, fun movie.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very frothy. It's very, War of the Worlds, which I thought was, I don't know what I think about War of the Worlds.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. As someone who loves that novel, he makes the mistake of thinking that if you just straight up adapt it, it's going to work. And the stuff he changes, I don't like, and the stuff he keeps, I don't like. It's like every time he should zag, he zags, and opposite is so. It's fine. It's fine. Just like his next couple, like Munich is fine.
He did get nominated for an Oscar for Munich. I think Munich is good. I think it's a good, like, solid thriller. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the less said about the better.
The less said the better, yeah.
I really like The Adventures of Tintin. I think it's not perfect, and I think of those movies where there's the uncanny valley element because they tried to make it as cartoony as possible. I think it did a really good job. I think there's really good frenetic action, and I also just like that kind of style of like adventure movie. So I will go to bat for The Adventures of Tintin. I think Warhorse is boring as shit. um, Lincoln, I think, is really good. He did get
I
nominated
agree,
for
but
that
I also
too.
wonder how much of that is the leading performance
100%.
elevates. You know what I mean? So, and then,
It's a
and then
lot of
by the
people sitting around with blankets.
yeah,
That's most
I
of what
really
that
do
movie
like
is.
that movie. I really do like that movie, but
Yeah.
and then he goes Bridge of Spies, the BFG, The Post. The Post is the absolute middle. If we take every movie ever made and list them from worst to best, The
Yeah.
Post is directly in the middle, followed by Ready Player One, which is close to the worst.
I
And then
think
he
his
kind of
West Side
gets.
Story is something like, I think it is very underappreciated. I think it is a
I
very
think
well directed movie.
I think that's the general consensus. And then The Fablemans, which people like, but I don't think.
I didn't really
Uh,
like The Fablemans that much.
yeah, I don't think it's so. But like, we just went through it, and there aren't a lot of duds. And
No.
usually, the biggest criticism we have is like, it's fine. Which
Yeah, it's fine.
what
Yeah, like you
directors do you
said,
have
The
that for?
Post. Yeah. Um, he started making, with the exception of the BFG, interestingly enough, he started making like grown-up movies. You know what I mean? Like just sort of like, I'm an older guy, I'm gonna make an older movie. And then he makes Ready Player One, of course, which is, I think that movie, like you said, truly bad.
Oh no! Please do not undersell my hatred for that movie. I think that I hated the book.
Yeah. It's
I hated the
so
book.
smug and so
I
like,
it
I know
also
these things.
it's the member berries the book. It's the
Totally.
laziest. It does nothing to engage with the thing it claims to love. But when I finished reading, and I read it because it was going to be made into a movie, I was like, oh, okay. The foundation's there. Spielberg is going to do something good with this. He's going to fix all these problems, kind of like he does with Jaws, right? He gets
Mhm.
rid of all the, and somehow he delivered a movie that was worse than the book. Come at me.
Okay.
I want the Ready Player One people to come at me. I hate this movie so much that I need to release my anger any opportunity I have. If you love Ready Player One, please, I'm begging you, come at me. Let's go.
I think getting him to direct it was one of the worst things they could have done, because he's the one that they're like, he is a representative of what that book is kind of like, is member burying about. And it's like, having him be in on the joke is like, no, that's not right. You know what I mean? Like, you need to have somebody who grew up with Spielberg movies directing it. Not to then, that would have made it a good story. Like, it is a very puerile and like, you know, annoying and smug type of movie, but it's like, just having a bunch of IP in there is not the same as having, you know, and famously they couldn't get, was it Gundams or something like that? I'm trying to remember. And so they put the Iron Giant in there, but it was just like, what does Warner Brothers have, you know? And like, and you get that, and then if you got Space Jam, whatever the next one is, the one with he didn't direct it, but the one with LeBron James, where it's basically just like, what do we have? What do we have access to? What IP can we just put in the background of movies? So that's why like there's a whole bunch of The Shining in those movies for some reason. Like, it's dumb. It's dumb. It makes me angry. Do something more. Anyway, we're not here to talk about why Ready Player One is bad. We're here to talk about why Jaws is good. So let's get into the actual, like, the film itself. Like, we talked about the making of it, we talked about Spielberg, but let's talk about like what were your first memories, or the first time you kind of solidified like, I'm watching Jaws, a great movie, and I recognize that it's great.
I don't have any memory of the first time I watched it because, like you said, it was always just there, right? It was referenced and everything. There were a couple of movies like that, like Citizen Kane. I knew about Citizen Kane and Rosebud Lug before I ever watched that movie, and Jaws was kind of like that. I have this vague sense though that it just started to be on TV, especially in the summer, and I would just start to watch it. But you would see you would just come into it whenever you came into it, and it'd suck you in. So I feel like I've seen the opening scene the least amount of times for that reason.
Mm.
Um, so my memory is kind of maybe piecing it together here and there and be like, oh, I hadn't seen that part. Oh, I don't think I've ever actually seen what happened to the girl at the beginning. This is the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. And it was impossible as a kid with a mom who was scarred from Jaws when she was a kid, um, to not think about it every time you went to the beach.
Oh
I
yeah,
I,
for sure.
I think that's kind of disappeared. Unlike like how everybody who ever goes on a cruise ship thinks about the Titanic, I don't think everybody's thinking about Jaws when they go to the beach anymore. But I thought about it every time when I was a kid.
So that actress who plays the Chrissy, the girl who gets eaten at the beginning, Susan Backliny, I think is how you pronounce it. She was a stunt person as well as an actress, and I think a model as well. But like, what did I just watch that she was in, or like had a little bit in? Crap, now I cannot remember. Um, Darn, what a bad story. But someone was like, "Oh yeah, that's the girl from Jaws," like, who basically again got eaten by stuff. Oh, it was it's this movie Day of the Animals,
Mm.
which is not it's a very bad movie, but it was made kind of in the wake of Jaws. Because it's the other thing. There was a lot of like nature attacks movies after Jaws came out. Um, some of which I think are fun, and you know, B movies and stuff like that. Day of the Animals is not one of them. It's just about chemically imbalanced forest, basically, that like turns all the animals and these hikers, and Leslie Nielsen just pre Airplane is one of the like villains in it, and he's like leads a group of people. But uh Susan Backliny is in it, and she gets eaten by like I don't even know what, like a wolf or a mountain lion or something like that. It is
We all
such a
have our
stupid
skills.
Yeah, that was that was what she did. But yeah, that opening sequence is iconic for a reason. You know, that it's one of the better day for night shots.
Yes.
A lot of day for night does not look good, and you can tell like if there's shadows on the ground. That's not The moon doesn't cast shadows the same way that the sun does. Like stuff like that. Like you can tell day for night. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I still think some of the worst day for night is in one of my favorite movies, A Fistful of Dollars. Go back and watch that. The day for night stuff is so bad. But it was a cheap Italian movie. But that was really great. And like her just, you know, and infamously, they had like whatever rig under the water to like pull her down, like, and she didn't know when it was going to happen. So like that reaction was real. Like it would just jerk her under the water and like pull her around and stuff like that. It's really, really scary, and you don't see anything, but the camera like looking up at her and stuff like that. You get the Jaws. I was going to say the Jaws eye view, but that makes no sense. His name isn't Jaws. Jaws the shark.
You get the Jaws eye view.
The shark eye view. Bruce, the name of the mechanical shark that didn't work. And then yeah, like they just find like bits, and it's like, ugh, like
This is the shot
movie
later. You get the shot later of her arm with the jewelry still on, and the crabs,
that's how they know
and
it
the
was
seaweed.
her. Yeah,
And it is. I mean, and then obviously, you know, we get the shark autopsy later, which also has kind of the same effect, which is like, oh, she's like, none of these people are in there. It's more horrifying to not find them.
Well, I love the fact, quote unquote, the fact that so Matt Hooper comes out, which is Richard Dreyfuss's character, in full Richard Dreyfuss, like I'm annoyed at everything mode. Also, let's talk about Roy Scheider for 2 seconds before I get into this point. I love Roy Scheider in general. I think he's a really underrated kind of, you know, 70s actor. He was in a lot of really good movies. He obviously played Bob Fosse and in the movie Fosse, and he's really, really good. Wait, is that right? I'm pretty sure that's true. Or he was in, oh man, I'm going to lose my mind now.
We're getting old.
We're getting old. I can't remember things.
Jaws is not that much older than us, unfortunately.
I know. I was -9. That's how old I was when it came out.
Yeah, he's in All That Jazz.
All That Jazz. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
He's not in the movie Fosse. He's in the movie All That Jazz, playing a Bob Fosse type character. Thank you very much. Now we can move on, and my brain will work again. But I think he's super good in the movie. I think he's an excellent kind of like everyman type of dude who just has to kind of deal with this horrible situation. And you have Matt Hooper, who knows everything, you know, a dorky know-it-all kind of guy. And then you have Quint, who we'll talk about in a sec, Robert Shaw, like just absolutely going out of his mind, and was out of his mind at the time. Apparently like was drunk all the time, would absolutely nail every single take. There was a whole line of these British actors who were they would just drink heavily all the time, kill it in performances, and then would eventually die of liver cirrhosis. Like Stephanie and I, my wife and I, last night watched The Three Musketeers with Oliver Reed in it, and I was like, yeah, he died on the set of a movie because he was drinking so much. Anyway,
What a
I
legacy.
what a legacy. And, you know, like Richard Harris and all these guys would just go out and Richard Harris lived a ripe old age, as did Peter O'Toole and all this stuff. And it's like that, you know, Robert Shaw was pretty old when he died too. So it's just like, didn't take anything away from them, but they were drunk all the time. Anyway, neither here nor there. Anyway, to my original point, 25 minutes ago, it seems like, um, they catch a tiger shark, which is a big shark, a really big shark. And Matt
Oh,
Hooper's like,
what?
yeah, yeah. The yokels, the New England yokels are my favorite in this. Uh, um, where is Amity Island supposed to be?
I think off of Martha's Vineyard.
That's what I
It's
think too.
Oh no,
So
I'm sorry. Amity. No, I'm sorry. Amity is supposed to be in New York. They filmed it though.
in Martha's Vineyard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be in New York. But it's kind of like, it feels very much like more like a New England island.
It always reads New Englandy to me, I think. Um, but Matt Hooper being like, oh no, this shark is not even close to big enough to, with all the bite marks that I found and everything like that. And it's just like, it's that kind of level where you see an actual shark and they do actually cut open a real shark and all this stuff. That which I do not condone, but that sets up the kind of reality of the situation. Is like, this huge thing is not even the one that is doing all the killing. Like, the thing that we're looking for is, as you said earlier, 20 to 25 feet long, like no question. And then we see bits, you know, as it goes on, like the fins in the water. And then there's the awful scene, you know, with the Kettner boy and everything. I think oh wait, who is it? Some comedian or somebody else like has a like the mayor is actually the hero of the movie somehow. Oh no, it's Howard Kramer, whose whole thing is have a summer. I don't know if you've ever seen that bit. He's like,
No.
everything
It's a
about
tough
how
sell though.
yeah,
It's
summer's
tough
the
sell.
best. He's like, you know who's the hero? The mayor, because he just wants people to have a summer. It's great. Anyway, who cares? But yeah, like the more deaths that accrue, and then there's like the guy's head in the ship, or you know, in the sunken boat and everything like that, which is a great like just kind of jump scare moment. All of this to set up like how terrifying the shark is, and then you get Robert Shaw's Quint, who's like, I've been hunting sharks since I heard all my friends on the Indianapolis and all this stuff. Like, oh, criminy.
It's a movie where the every character that plays a significant role, or even just a somewhat, is absolutely perfect. I'm glad you mentioned Roy Scheider. The movie does not work as well as it does without his performance,
100%.
which I think is another one of those performances that's very easy to overlook, because it's so authentic, it's so earnest, it feels so natural. He feels so real. You know, Quint is a character. Even Hooper is kind of a character, right? This little rich know-it-all kid who comes in and is like got a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
But Scheider as Chief Brody has to be us, right? He has to be the person who's out of his depth, no pun intended, and he also has to carry the weight of the world, right? Like Hooper's whole thing is like, hey, this is kind of fun. Not that he wants people to die; he wants to save people, but like this is kind of like his whole life's work. He's like, okay, now I get to do it. This is Quint's obsession. Brody is us, and there are so many scenes. So for the 45th anniversary, and it's still up on the site, I did the 45 best moments from Jaws. I could have done 90. I could have done 90 best moments.
Yeah.
And the amount of scenes in the top 10 that only work because of Brody, you know, there's the moment Michael's in the pond, right? After the kids pull off the most thoughtless, funniest prank ever. And, you know, somebody else is yelling shark, and he's just exhausted. He's just so tired. He just wants to go to sleep. And his wife says, Michael's in the pond. And he starts to walk and then realizes what actually this means and just takes off into a full sprint. It's the type of moment in a movie like this where it's so quotable and so many memorable characters and scenes and events. I think that scene encapsulates why the movie really does work, because for everything going on, for the spectacle of a giant shark eating people and eating a boat, and these larger than life characters around him, the movie works because it feels real, and it feels real because of him.
Yeah, he's got one of my favorite moments is when they're having dinner, and it's just like everything is against him, like he got slapped by Mrs. Kettner, even though it was absolutely not his fault, like all this stuff. They go and have dinner, and
It was his fault.
wow, okay, cool.
It was his fault. He knew that a girl got killed there recently. He knew it was dangerous. He's responsible for Alex Kintner's death. As much as the mayor, as much as the shark. Actually, I'm not even going to blame the shark. The shark can't think. It's a shark.
Yeah,
it's an eating machine.
Yeah, what is this? Jaws 2 and 4? Where it has revenge purposes.
Saying, Brody has responsibility for Alex Kintner's death.
I'm not saying he doesn't have responsibility, but it's more like to be the sole recipient of slap, I think is a gross, like he is middleman at best. He knew better. I agree with that. Sure.
He knew better.
Mayor Vaughn's the villain.
Sorry,
his jacket game is absolutely unbridled.
Oh my God. I
want that jacket so bad.
Cinemas,
I don't even care about the sea. And I love that.
I spent some time one year for Halloween trying to find that exact jacket.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I found things that were close enough, but I was not happy.
Yeah, you need it pretty dead on if you're going to do it. Anyway, the scene, they're all sitting around the table, and he just pours a pint glass of wine up to the
doesn't let it breathe. Doesn't let it breathe.
Hooper's like, yeah, you're gonna want to let that breathe. Oh, okay, like he's such an whatever. Like he's such a snob that he's just like, oh, you're gonna want to blah blah blah. I love that part. I also love that's some bad hat, Harry. That's one of my favorite line readings ever. When they're on the beach, obviously the scene when like there is actually the attack out there when they're all swimming, and there's the scene or the shot stretch, which is you dolly in while you zoom out, or vice versa, depending on what you're trying to do. It's an incredible moment. It like distorts, and actually they use that a lot on Severance, which you and I obviously have talked about ad nauseum. But that's how they do the elevator thing. Is they do the it's not a rack focus, it's a dolly zoom, I guess is what it's actually just called.
Yeah.
That moment is great. That whole scene on the beach is really great. And then, you're going to need a bigger boat is incredible, where he just like sits bolt up, like after he's chumming and he's not even paying attention. The shark is there and it's just like so big. But I also love when like Quint completely loses his mind and like destroys the radio. And then Brody just goes, "You're certifiable. You know that? You're certifiable." It's just like, it's such an old type of way to yell at somebody. And then, of course, "Smile, you son of a bitch" is a great line, which they've disproven on Mythbusters. That would not happen, but it doesn't make it not a good ending of the movie.
Not care.
Yeah. That shark needed to get exploded.
Belcher hated the ending. He said it was too Hollywood. In his novel, the shark just dies from all of the wounds it's taken, and it's as I would point out, this is a movie. This is a movie.
Things need to happen in movies.
Spielberg does this ending in War of the Worlds. He does the book ending, which is very quiet, where the germs get to the aliens and they just die because they're not, and it doesn't work. It's great in the book, fits the themes of the book, doesn't work on screen. So good job, Steven Spielberg, making the right change. I know people love to say like, oh, if they change too much, you complain. If they don't change it, no, different things need different solutions.
Yeah. And there's so many differences, like, like we talked about already, like there's so many just kind of dumb stuff, so much dumb stuff in the book that they just excised. And there are whole characters like Carl Gottlieb, who's the screenwriter of this movie, or the co-screenwriter, I guess, plays a character, Meadows, who's a big character in the book, but he's barely in the movie. And also I think he was the big one, obviously, that they kind of cut out, but there were tons more characters that just were like, this is not important. What is important are the three main guys, and also Mrs. Brody. I think Lorraine Gary does an amazing job too, and she
has some of the best scenes in the movie. The one where I think the funniest scene in the movie, when she Brody's telling the boys to get off the boat, and she's like, "Oh, they're just kids." And then she sees the picture in the big shark book of the shark attacking a canoe. She's like, "Don't you listen to your father?" She also has that great scene with him right before he leaves, where it's left unsaid, but it's so obvious they realize he might not be coming back.
Yeah.
She's fantastic, and everybody. I mean, the two idiots throwing the holiday roast,
Yeah.
like they're gonna catch a shark from the dock. Everyone's just really good in this movie.
Yeah. I love all that stuff. Robert Shaw to me was always when I was a younger man, when I wore a younger man's clothes. That is not a good line. Not to just throw
Billy Joel just taking
under the
strays on a Jaws podcast.
Yeah. I always really loved Robert Shaw's Quint. I think he's such an he's like, I hunt sharks. That's what I do. Like, it's just that he is an insane person who just happens to be very good at hunting sharks. He lets that, he rightfully, I think he's the Ahab character. He goes down with the ship. I think it's one of the most brutal deaths in movies like this. Like he just completely gets.
It's brutal. It's
eaten
brutal.
from the feet upward. It's
the scream with the blood coming out of his mouth.
And they cut out a ton of that when it airs on TV, or did. And so it would cut from like him going to him getting pulled under. Like the whole time when he's like half in the shark getting like writhed around, pulled around, that just would always get cut out on TV. And it honestly made it more vicious in my opinion, because it's like he just goes crunch dead. Like but it's incredibly gory. And then when, at that point we're not sure where Hooper is, like he goes in the cage and everything like that. And the ship, the Orca is sinking. Like it could not be a more apocalyptic ending to that movie.
I think Quint is, we're talking, I've already said this about a few other things, but this is how highly I think of this movie. I think Quint is in the handful of greatest movie characters ever.
Yeah.
In fact, I gave my number one spot to the best moment of the film to the story of the USS Indianapolis.
It's so good. It's one of the it's such a good monologue.
I have never really thought about it, but it might be my favorite monologue in movie history.
Mm-hmm.
It is incredible. I know he was a stage performer first, and that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like you're on the boat with him.
Yeah.
And the reaction of the other two also, like they're so good in it too, but it is absolutely mesmerizing. I don't care what else is on. If I come across that, I mean, if I come across Jaws, I'm watching it for at least a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't, if I'm close to that scene, I'm sticking it out until that moment.
That whole section where they're under, where they're in the galley or whatever, like at night, is among the greatest 15 minutes of movies, and very little happens. It's just those three guys. They start out, they're just kind of drinking, and then Hooper and Quint are going back and forth, like showing each other the wounds that they've gotten from various sharks, and like Brody doesn't have, he looks at his appendix scar and he's like, I'm not even gonna bother, and like it's an adorable moment. And then they start going crazy about or they're singing "Show Me the Way to Go," all that stuff. But then Hooper just kind of casually asks what's that, and he's like, oh, that's, and then he goes into this whole monologue about the Indianapolis, which was a real thing. They've made movies about that too. Like this ship went down during World War II. Was it World War II or is it Korea? I think it was World War II.
Anyway, we delivered the bomb. So yeah.
Anyway, that's it. Yeah, it was World War II. Anyway, we delivered the bomb. Like he's so good.
That's pretty good, Kyle. That's pretty good. You've been holding back on this Quint impression.
Farewell and adieu, dear fair Spanish ladies.
Such a funny scene. Oh my goodness.
Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain.
That's the thing.
He's just, it's one of my favorite.
Laugh out loud funny moments.
Yeah.
Laugh out loud funny moments. I sometimes you'll see something and it's so serious. The taxidermy
man's going to have a heart attack when he sees what I brung him.
This is a movie. I anybody who's been listening to this podcast since the beginning knows that I always
all 101 episodes.
I always give credit to movies where they will actually kill one of the kid characters.
Sure.
Because so many movies want to pull back on that.
Yeah.
Here's a movie where a child gets eaten by a shark in front of his mother.
Yeah.
on a crowded beach, and it's still laugh out loud funny. And you just see these movies sometimes that are so serious, and it's like, hey, you guys know that like even in the darkest time, people like to laugh, right? Or they'll make a
Mhm.
joke to ease the tension. And it just again, everything feels it's this big grand spectacle ultimately that doesn't feel that way because it feels real and human.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a movie about people in, I wouldn't even say like an extraordinary situation, because like obviously there's sharks and shark attacks and stuff like that. There was, what was that? Maybe a decade ago or so? Maybe a little more than that. Remember that summer where there were
Yes,
just
it,
shark
w-
attacks like crazy? Like what was happening?
but the funny thing was it wasn't even anything out of the norm. They just
No.
reported on all three of them, so it felt
Yeah.
like a major problem.
It felt like that whole summer was just like sharks everywhere, and then they just didn't report the next summer or whatever like that. Um yeah, it's very believable. You feel a sense of triumph at the end, like when Brody blows up the shark's head and like he just starts screaming with like delight, um, as chunks of a shark fall down from the sky. And then like Hooper like pops back up, and it's just like they kind of just laugh, like, "Hey, man, what? Hey," like,
Is it
uh,
Wednesday? I love
yeah,
that ending.
yeah. I used to hate the water. I can't imagine why. Such a good final moment for these two guys who have been in it for the whole thing. And like, yeah. And like Hooper asking just kind of like, Quint, and he just goes, no. And like that's it. They don't need to talk about it anymore. And yeah, I think Jaws is in the handful. Like we talked about, it's a perfect movie. I think this is easily like it, it's up there like with Die Hard and maybe the first Jurassic Park and a couple other movies as the movies I've seen the most times. um could easily quote verbatim. um
I
it
feel like I
has
could
been,
write the script from memory.
yeah, honestly I feel like that's true for a lot of, especially when I was younger. I could do that with a lot of movies. But um yeah, I think it's incredible, and it's so crazy to me that it's 50 years old and it still feels kind of so fresh in a lot of ways. Like it feels like it is the quintessential it is the quintessential summer blockbuster, but it's also kind of better than most of them anyway. Like,
And I think, and we're going to get into this as we talk about other great summer blockbusters.
yeah,
It's because it's not setting out to be something that did not exist, a summer blockbuster. It's just setting out to be a great movie.
yeah,
It has wide appeal, but it's not made for that. It's just made to be great unto itself. And this is
right,
something that a lot of blockbusters eventually kind of forget about, which they think it's only about the spectacle. It's only
right.
about the fun. It's only about eating popcorn and escapism.
I call those
But
schlockbusters. I've never used that term in my life.
I'm just gonna skip. I can just skip over that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Schlockbuster. Okay, great.
Not
Um,
everything needs to be commented on.
yeah, sure, sure. One thing that I don't really ever see discussed with this a lot, because we don't necessarily think about movies like this, even though it's so important because it's still a story. This has man versus man,
Yep.
man versus himself, man versus nature. It has,
The three. Those are the big.
man versus society, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, Brody, he's up against the mayor, but the mayor represents the entire town, which amity does mean friendship. But it just has all of these conflicts that are working in harmony to tell one story, and it enriches the story to have all of those different things. And you don't see that brought up a lot, but it's such an important thing. And like this is like a disaster movie and a horror movie and a drama.
Mm-hmm.
But it never feels like it's of those. It feels like it's its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it all starts with the script, and we kind of crapped over the book a little bit, but like there's still the really compelling story there
Mm-hmm.
that they take the best parts of or adapt. And then it starts with the script, and then again, these things, we can look at the best movies ever made. We can look at a perfect movie and be like, wow, they knew what they were doing. Sometimes you just got to get lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if the shark had worked, we might not be having this discussion.
Yeah.
If we see the shark in the first 20 minutes of the movie, maybe none of it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the simple. The shark is just literally a force of nature. If we see it too much, then it becomes not that. It loses its mystique, and that's true of a lot of. That's why a lot of CGI heavy movies like kind of dull people's sense of. There's no awe anymore to things like that because we see it so frequently, and they just put it up on the screen because they think that's what makes a good movie. And anyone who really knows suspense and horror knows that holding back is the best way to do it. Like Alien, there was nothing the matter with the alien suit. The alien suit was great. It had one of the best designs of anything ever, and they held back on showing you the full thing for as long as they possibly could, to build suspense and to build kind of tension. And you just see little claws or just very close up of the teeth or like a flash in the tunnel or anything like that. Which is, if you have a good design and you have even a good puppet or a good whatever, you still need to hold back on it so that there's a sense of wonder and a sense of like anticipation and things like that. When I was younger, and I've definitely mentioned this on the show, I was scared of most movies. Like I was not a big horror person until I was well into college. But I always liked best the moment, or I felt more at ease when the shit would hit the fan and you'd see the monster. It would just be around for a lot, because at that point I'm not scared anymore because it's there. Like I see it, it's big, it's loud, it's whatever. I can kind of cope with that. I'm not afraid of seeing a thing. I'm afraid of almost seeing a thing, or like, whatever like that. So like, and I think like Brody coming eye to eye basically with the shark as it comes out of the water and then goes back in is as scary a shot as anything that's ever been on film, like ever, and television, because that's where most people see it.
I'm glad you mentioned Alien, because I know we want to talk about what we think. What has a claim to the best summer blockbuster, and whether or not it's. So I went through I went through various lists to kind of see like what are considered. First off, I don't know about you. The general idea of what a summer blockbuster entails in terms of release date is anything in May, June, July, or August. I don't really love that. I don't think the beginning of May qualifies as summer. I think you have to, for me, I think you probably need to be coming out like Memorial Day weekend, maybe 1 week before, because you're trying to hit that, like, that those 4 to 5 weeks there, or, 25, 30 years ago, you're trying to hit all 3-4 months.
Right.
I also strangely don't really feel like any movie that comes out like after August 10th to be a summer blockbuster.
It's real June, July. I mean, like Memorial Day to end
August
of July,
1st.
I guess. August 1st.
Yeah,
I kind of think, like you missed the window.
I have some movies on here that qualify for my other people's, but not for me. Like The Avengers came out May 4th.
Mm-hmm.
The 2009 Star Trek May 8th. Twister came out May 10th. So you might see those on best summer blockbusters, but I think they don't. And someone's going to probably say like, "Oh, you missed a date." That also came out if I missed a date, I'm sorry. But there are, I think, there are lots of really memorable, fun, great summer blockbusters. We already mentioned a bunch from Spielberg, like Minority Report, all of the Indiana Jones movies, which especially like Raiders of the Lost Ark was supposed to fill that.
Right.
Back to the Future is supposed to be that. Ghostbusters, although I'm not totally sure they knew Ghostbusters was going to do gangbusters.
No, there's no way.
But
it did.
that was a big movie because it was the guys from SNL, that was, but I don't know about you. When I think of summer blockbusters, a couple stand out because they were sold that way, and then they also really landed. One is Jurassic Park.
For sure. Absolutely.
Which is everything we've said about Jaws, you could say about Jurassic Park. I think it's a perfect movie. I think that it works for all of the same reasons that Jaws does. The other one that I think of, I remember Batman coming out, but I'm a little too young to truly have appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, retrospectively, yes, that was a huge summer movie.
Yeah. And it was advertised to be that. I was a little too young to appreciate the advertising push. I just remember it being everywhere. And Eric Diaz wrote an amazing piece about Batman, and that logo and everywhere. Please check it out. He's the best at big picture look backs like that. But the one that really stands out to me, I Am the Perfect Age, was Independence Day.
Oh, hell yeah. That summer of
That
96 was the year I realized summer blockbusters were a thing, and I wanted to go see all of them. I was
I mean,
12, and that's the
it w-
perfect age for wanting to go see those movies.
Kyle, I think that was that's the first movie I remember really specifically being like so geeked up for. Like,
Totally.
oh my God, I can't wait. I'm going to be there opening night. It wasn't like there had never been summer blockbusters that were advertised because, there was there are other ones, but that to me, and I don't put Independence Day in the perfect movie category, but
Absolutely not.
it is an amazing it is an amazing summer blockbuster.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 1996 because I think that is that's a formative year for me of movies. So let's get to. I'll even start in May just because why not? All right, come on. 96 also the year March is when Fargo came out, and that movie is incredible. I just remember so many of these movies coming out. Like The Quest. I went to go see The Quest at the Dollar movie theater, that Jean-Claude Van Damme stupid movie that was like not as good as Bloodsport, basically. All right, so The Craft, which I know a lot of people really like. So you get to okay, yeah, like you said, Twisters was May 10th. Or Twister was May 10th. And that was a huge movie. Huge movie. They made a whole, I guess, attraction at Universal Studios about it. God, Universal had such a good year that year. Oh my God.
It also launched a little mini era of those disaster movies.
Yes.
Like that's where we get, what is it? Dante's Peak. And what was the other one? Volcano? Was it just
Volcano
called Volcano?
And Dante's Peak came out the same year, which I think was at some point 97 or 8, maybe 97. I want to say.
So around there. Yeah.
I think the teaser trailer for Dante's Peak is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Go online and look at the teaser trailer because it's literally just it can turn air into fire, and like you just see like, oh, it just creeped me the hell out when I was a kid.
I love
Mission
Dante's
Impossible.
Peak.
The first Mission Impossible came out on the 22nd of May. And obviously, we've talked a lot about that franchise and everything like that. Dragonheart, I saw at a drive-in. One of the only times I've ever gone to a drive-in like that was operational and not just like a nostalgia thing. Was Labor Day weekend. Then The Phantom, which God help me, I really was excited to see The Phantom in 1996. I know it's not good.
I feel like that's not that. It might sound silly now, but I feel like in 1996 that was not silly.
Yeah, I mean, to want to go see it, yeah. Like, and I remember,
I feel like there was some excitement for that.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about very old memories for both of us now, but
and I think I can't remember if we talked about this before, but there was a weird post Batman. They were looking for other studios were looking for their own version of that, and it's so funny because the people who were running the studios at the time were old, and so they were like, "What other pulp characters from the 40s can we bring out?" And like without completely realizing that, like, Batman is timeless, and it was filmed in a timeless way. Anyway, The Cable Guy, that was a big movie, even though people really don't like it or didn't like it at the time.
Well, people were wrong then, and they're wrong now.
Eraser. Yeah. That was something. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Notre Dame, excuse me, the Disney movie, which was a controversial Disney movie because it was very adult. The Nutty Professor was a huge movie.
Oh my goodness, that was a huge movie.
Yeah. And then just a week later, Independence Day came out, July 3rd. Perfect timing for that movie.
I'll forget my own name before I forget the advertising for that. It was like on July 2nd, they arrive. On July 3rd, they attack. On July 4th, we respond or we fight back, whatever.
Earth fights back.
Sorry, I said I will never, but like that, it was so good. The advertising was so good. And it wasn't replicable because 2 years later, Godzilla, the Matthew Broderick 98 Godzilla,
same people absolutely
tried to do this.
Yep.
I don't ever remember a movie being advertised more than the 98 Godzilla.
100%.
Everywhere you went, every bus, it would be like, this is his foot, a side of a building, this is his leg, right? Godzilla was everywhere. That movie came, nobody saw it, and those who did hated it.
Do you want to know what? I saw it for what I don't remember why this is, but my 8th grade class walked from school to the movies, which was at the mall, to see Godzilla. That was like a class outing in 8th grade, and I don't know why.
I can tell you why. As a former teacher, your teachers were exhausted.
Yeah, I guess it was like May or whatever, April or May. And so they were like, we gotta do something. We're so tired. And then of course there's Kazam starring Shaquille O'Neal, not Shazam, starring Sinbad, a movie that doesn't exist.
A movie that definitely exists. We all remember Shazam with Sinbad.
And then there's movies like Multiplicity, which I think people really like, and like Phenomenon, which was, I think, a big like hit at the time, but it wasn't like a huge blockbuster or anything like that. The Frighteners,
but those
which
movies, it's so funny you're listing these movies because those movies were things people were looking forward to.
Absolutely.
That you were aware of
100%.
in a way that will never happen again. Movies come and go and people don't even know they were out. They knew nothing about them before. But these were movies with movie stars that people were looking forward to. And I miss this era of people being excited for movies. Now it's so much, it's just so specific now, and it's hard to get these for lack of a better term, get these films into the zeitgeist where we all kind of talk about them. This is why, like with certain TV shows, it's fun when they do hit because we get to talk about them all together and experience them. And this is what movies used to be like.
So still in July, we also had Trainspotting, A Time to Kill, and Kingpin. Like those all came out the same weekend, close to, like within a couple days of each other.
What a summer!
What a summer! What a country! And then August, stuff like Chain Reaction, which I remember being like heavily advertised. Matilda, I quite like it. The Danny DeVito directed movie. Escape from LA, which I remember seeing the teaser trailer for, was like, here are the rules of the theater. And it was like they started listing stuff and then it started getting more and more ridiculous. And then Kurt Russell pops up as Snake Plissken and goes, you know, your rules are really starting to annoy me. Stupid. Not a good movie. The Fan, of course. The Tony Scott movie, which is not good. Tin Cup, I think, was a big movie. I also remember seeing I think it was, I went to go see The Phantom and I saw the trailer for The Island of Dr. Moreau that sort of like famously like troubled and like, you know, almost canceled movie with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, where both of them were like trying to out piece of shit each other on the set. A Very Brady sequel. And then by the end you got like, you know, bad movies like The Stupids and First Kid and stuff like that. But that was a summer.
It's funny. I wonder how many people who really love movies like the way you do have that type of summer.
It's like, incredible, man. Like,
you know, like, oh yeah, I really got into movies in the 1993. Like,
yeah,
these
it's looking at this list, I was like, and there were things like, and this is such a nostalgia thing about the 90s, but like I think on the aforementioned television, back before they were just all trash, it was like Coming Attractions was a show where they like showed you trailers for movies that were coming out, or like Movie Magic was a show on Discovery Channel where like they would tell you how they did special effects for old and newer movies and things like that. And I was just like, I ate that stuff up. And I remember watching a whole episode of that, I think, about Independence Day and how they did the miniature, you know, like explosions of the White House and stuff like that. And it's actually quite a big model, but, you know, like a scale model, but and they, you know, shot it in super slow motion so that it looked like the explosion happened bigger than it is. That's how you shoot explosions, so it doesn't look like just a model exploding. Just all that stuff. Like that summer was my, like, I won't say my first introduction to movies because I'd been watching movies forever, but like that was the year that I really started caring about how movies were made, like what was coming out, when it was coming out, what I was going to go see. And, you know, last week I talked a little bit with Rosie about my favorite Batman movie, which is Batman Forever, which came out the year before. That was the first, you know, movie I ever paid for myself to go see in the theaters. It was the first CD I ever bought, was the soundtrack to Batman Forever. So it was like that is such a formative time when I was 11 and 12. Like, man, just talking, and it's so weird to, like, we're talking about that in relation to Jaws and how like none none of that type of thing would happen. Kids like us grew up with the idea of summertime is when you go see all the big exciting movies, and like Super Bowl trailers. Like during the Super Bowl, I remember the Super Bowl in '97 is where they showed like the Jurassic Park trailer, or the Lost World trailer, and like Men in Black, and like all of these trailers were huge, and I was so excited to watch the trailers that were going to be on the Super Bowl and stuff like that. So thank you
I'm
for
glad
allowing me to go down nostalgia lane
I'm
for
glad you mentioned Men in Black, because I do want to just throw out a few more. I don't think it's just in case we haven't mentioned a few. I did have a rough list, and I wouldn't mind if people let me know what they think I missed. Speed. You mentioned Die Hard, Men in Black. Terminator 2 Judgment Day has to be mentioned on
For
summer
sure.
blockbusters. That was meant to be a summer blockbuster, and it
Yep.
was. All of the Star Wars movies from the original and prequel trilogies. The
Yep.
Dark Knight trilogy, those were all summer blockbusters.
Yeah. Man, that was it. The year I moved to LA was 2008. And so like seeing Iron Man and then Crystal Skull, of course, but then like, and The Dark Knight that summer, that was a big summer too.
I kind of just avoided superhero movies because they come to dominate summer blockbusters so much
Nowadays. Yeah, for sure.
I
I'm
was
excited
a little.
for the two.
I wasn't sure. I'm curious what you think of this one. If we should include Grease, because Grease was a huge summer hit, but that movie has a pretty small budget.
Yeah,
And I think it's like 6 million, and they don't let them really do like reshoots and stuff like that. I don't think it was meant to be a summer blockbuster, but it was, so it's whatever. Edge of Tomorrow. Another Tom Cruise is the acting side of the Mr. Summer Blockbuster.
Yeah. I think Edge of Tomorrow is such a good movie. I will never call it Live, Die, Repeat. It's Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah. Two movies that were summer blockbusters, but not in a traditional way, because they also very much had Oscar aspirations, were Saving Private Ryan and Apollo 13.
But those were big movies.
Big budget movies that were supposed to appeal to a broad audience, but they are a little different from what we think of as like the summer blockbuster, which is not. I'm not disparaging summer blockbusters, because I just said Jurassic Park is a perfect movie,
right?
The original, the first 3 Indiana Jones movies. You could also kind of go through animated films in the same way superheroes would be like
big Disney movies like Aladdin and stuff. Yeah, those are big.
The Lion King is the one that really was supposed to be the summer blockbuster. They eventually start releasing tons of Pixar movies. We talked about Batman, Alien, and Aliens. I think Aliens is more summer blockbuster because it's designed to be that way, whereas I think Alien set out to just be a great like space horror movie, great sci-fi horror, whereas Aliens, and you might notice there's a certain director who really likes to make these type of movies, and he's really good at it, and he makes movies that people sometimes say aren't very good, and then they make $1 gazillion.
I have a real love-hate with I have a hate with James Cameron. He's the reason why you get big blockbuster movies that should be summer movies that come out in the wintertime, because they shifted Titanic because they were like, and then we can push for awards, and that's what happened, and they won 1 million awards, and that's why all of his movies come out not in the summertime anymore. They come out in the wintertime.
Let me say this for James Cameron: he doesn't get defensive in the oh no, my dialogue's great. He's just like, nobody cares about dialogue. Yeah. Right? Like, I don't agree with him, but at least he's like, he knows exactly who he is and what he's doing, and he just makes movies that lots of people want to see and enjoy. This has to be mentioned in the summer blockbusters, even though this movie is kind of like the best type of garbage, Armageddon.
Like, for sure. That was another year that had 2 of the same type of movie come out.
A few years ago, we had Top Gun Maverick. Years ago, I don't think people think of this, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a big swing. And then, of course, maybe the most famous weekend in summer blockbuster history, Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Those were both big budget movies that had huge aspirations, and it did it. I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are, if in the 90s, it felt like summer blockbusters, people started to think that they had to be schlocky. Armageddon is probably the the
Sure.
apex, both the apex and the nadir of that
Mm-hmm.
thought process, because it's definitely silly popcorn fun, but it's definitely not good.
I'm not the first person to say this, and I can't even remember who I'm quoting, but wouldn't it have been easier to teach astronauts how to drill than the other
Oh,
way around?
I think that's Ben Affleck. Right?
Oh
Isn't
yeah,
that
he
his
does say that. Yeah,
in the
that's right.
famous
In the commentary track.
commentary, which
Yeah.
they don't let people do anymore? They don't. I don't think
He
they let the
honestly
actors.
used to be the best at commentaries because he would take the absolute piss out of whatever he was talking about. It was great. Very, very funny. But yeah, that's right. He's like, go back and listen to that one. I don't even know if they include that one anymore. I'm sure they do somewhere. I'm sure there's some
You can
edition.
find it on the internet. You
Yeah.
can find it on it's been plenty of stories.
It's some
about
sort of
it where-
archive that they have on the internet at some point, perhaps. Yeah. It it's incredible kind of going down this nostalgia because you and I, again, like we grew up with Jaws, but we're not of the time of Jaws. And same with Star Wars too. Like I can look at the pictures of what growing up with Star Wars was like, but it wasn't until the special editions that we actually got to experience going to see Star Wars and have that be a whole thing. And obviously was not quite the same. And then, it's not like we don't have those experiences at all, but like, it's interesting that Jaws, I still consider like, to me, it's more, it is like it's more like an academic. This is a great movie that does make me feel, adventure spirit and scared and all that stuff. Whereas like some of these other ones we're talking about, I just remember going and like tossing popcorn down my gaping maw and just like laughing and
All right. Well,
and
we got to answer the question.
yes.
After all this, is Jaws the greatest summer blockbuster ever?
No, I think it was John Landis's The Stupids. No, I'm kidding. I As much as I want to say yes, I think it might be the best. Well, we'd have to do a whole like look at all like what is the best movie that was ever a summer blockbuster. I think it's in the running for that. I also think it's in the running for the best summer blockbuster ever, but I do kind of think that as summer blockbusters, it's Star Wars and then everything else.
Okay. All right. I think
For
I
what
would,
it means for summer blockbusters, I think
I'm
Star
just-
Wars is obviously didn't start the trend, but I think it is the more important of the two movies.
I guess I think of it more in terms of like the quality of the movie. And for me, I actually think it comes down to two Spielberg movies, Jaws or Jurassic Park.
Sure. Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
are both
I
perfect.
can't really argue with that for sure.
But I think that Jaws has an advantage over most summer blockbusters. Not that it created the concept, but that it's a summer movie.
It is about the summer. That's true.
It's about the summer, and maybe that doesn't matter, but to me, it just like I don't feel like this is embarrassing because it's so true. I'm not making this up. I'm not exaggerating.
I can't wait to hear this.
I really don't feel like my summer begins until I come across Jaws on cable TV.
Wow. You're one of the few people who still like has cable because you like
they're
flipping through channels.
I will be the last person with cable because I like flipping around. I like to complain that I have 500 movies I've never seen that I really want to see while I watch the same movie for the 80th time because it's on the USA Network. I mean, I don't know how people thought we all fell in love with Shawshank Redemption, but we've lost something here, people.
I do think there's something to be said for TNT showing Jaws and Shawshank and like all these movies a billion times, and TBS was it TBS or no WGN? WGN showing Ferris Bueller nonstop because that was the Chicago movie basically.
Plus, we all had local stations that we used to show these movies that they could afford. But to me, like I want to, you mentioned Die Hard, which probably should have gotten a little bit more of a rub here when we're talking about greatest summer blockbusters. Because that was they paid Bruce Willis a lot of money to star in that film because they had high aspirations for it, even though he wasn't a movie star at the time.
No, the guy from Moonlighting, idiots did say
Die Hard doesn't fit in a summer watch the way Jaws does.
No,
and there is really not many movies on this list that are summer movies that also are summer blockbusters.
So obviously Die Hard famously gets talked about as a Christmas movie. It does take place on Christmas, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Are there any summer, like that is a summer movie that takes place at Christmas. Are there any Christmas movies that take place in the summer? Christmas time movies, like movie released. I mean, obviously there probably are. I don't know, but I don't think it's as common as the other way around, because like Lethal Weapon was also a Christmas movie because it's a Shane Black movie. Ergo, it's a Christmas movie.
I mean, Gremlins came out on June 8th.
Yeah, totally. I think that
You know?
that is much more frequent for a Christmas set movie to come out during the summertime if it is a summer style blockbuster type. Like most,
Home Alone was in theaters for so long that it went through every season.
yeah. God dang that movie. That like obviously it's Christmas, as they go away for Christmas, because they always show that at Thanksgiving. That feels more like a Thanksgiving movie to me, even though it's obviously a Christmas movie.
Well,
That
also
totally
came out in the
different
middle
story.
of November.
Anyway, I think obviously there's a case to be made, and I think Jaws is one of the best movies ever made. I think it's a movie that I can watch. It's been way too long since I have watched it. I was going to go see it at the Egyptian, I think, just recently, as part of TCM Fest, and I ended up not seeing it for some reason, and I can't really remember why. But it's great. It's perfect. It's Jaws. You know what I mean? Like, it's goddamn Jaws. Like, what more is
Perfect
there
movie.
to say about it?
Perfect movie.
Mikey, thank you as always for being on the show. These are always fun conversations. How can people get a hold of you, your work, and your I don't know what, a third thing, should they choose to do so?
If you want to take me up on my offer to come at me for Ready Player One, you could do so on Blue Sky at Burger Mike, all one word. But if you want to find my musings on all sorts of pop culture things, especially Jaws, where I've written about it extensively in the past, go to the greatest website anybody ever created, Nerdist.com.
It's a really interesting time for us at Nerdist, because we as you know from this podcast, like, we talked about Andor a lot. We did a lot about The Last of Us. We did a lot about Severance. It's a lot of TV stuff, and now we're getting back into like movie season, and it's weird to be like, oh, we have to wait, and then we can cover stuff. It's bizarre. But yeah, you can go back and read all of our Andor stuff, listen to our episodes about Andor. Mikey and I talked about the finale and kind of just everything about that, the last week of Andor. And yeah, thank you as always. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Kyle_Anderson. And yeah, this is episode 101. We broke up with another 100. I'm really stoked. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. And, onward and upward from here. So until next time, I've been Kyle Anderson. Join me again next week on Laser Focus, when my guest will be a different person. Bye-bye. Laser Focus is a production of Nerdist Industries and Legendary Digital Networks. It was produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kyle Anderson. For more, visit Nerdist.com.